KTN News.
6 hours and 17 minutes to the delivery of the budget statement for the 2017-2018 financial year by Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich in Parliament. KTN News is bringing you incisive details and as well as opinions from Kenyans on what they expect from the budget later today. The government has already promised that it will not impose any more taxes on Kenyans as it reads out its 2.6 trillion shilling budget later this afternoon. But let's bring in Michael Gitonga and Abby Agina, who are just outside Parliament where the reading will be taking place. Good morning, Mike and Abby. And you have been speaking to Kenyans on the streets this morning on what they expect. But even as Kenyans wait to hear what the budget will do for them, banks are also waiting to hear what the budget is going to do, especially in terms of addressing loan rates. Abby, what's the word in terms of the banking sector and the capping of interest rates?
Well, good morning once again, Michelle, and I'm here with Mike, as you've rightly said, and of course it's going to be an interesting budget this time round with a number of banks already being uneasy with the capping of interest rates at 14%, and we want to see what the Cabinet Secretary will be tabling on the House this afternoon. Will he be perhaps reducing duty or excise tax that banks pay on transaction fees, perhaps just to increase an uptake in the credit landscape? And Michelle, if you look at right now, majority of SMEs are saying as much as interest rates have been capped at 14%, banks have sort of restructured how they give loans, because they're saying now it is going to be a high risk, because if you're giving an SME a loan at 14% and the default rate is still the same, whereas compared to the previous time where they would give rates of about 20%, and if in case someone defaulted, the margin would be quite significant and they wouldn't feel that so much, Michelle. But let me also bring in Mike, who, other than just being in the media industry, I know you interact a lot with business people, and I know majority of Kenyans this morning, their biggest concern was on two things: cost of unga, and some also talking about taxation. I don't know, perhaps what other issues did arise as you made your way around the town this morning?
Well, thank you very much, Abby. Interacting with Kenyans is very interesting. And one of the things I think for me that has come out as a major highlight, first of all, is the amount of knowledge that people have about the budget and what they're expecting. And one of the ladies that we spoke to earlier on indicated that for her, she actually does not mind the taxation rate, because Kenya is one of the most highly taxed countries that we have. And whatever business transactions that you do, you'll realize that quite a huge chunk of the amount of money goes to government. But what was interesting from her comment is the fact that she said that she does not mind the amount of money she's taxed. However, it's only if that tax money would be utilized properly. So I think honors are on the government to tell us what happens to our tax money. Of course, there's a story, I think, on The Nation this morning where somebody carried a ridiculous amount of money on Mkokoteni, which just tells you, and of course, you know, when you look at it from the streets, Kenyans assume that that money is their money, and maybe it is their money. So, of course, that is something that is expected. But maybe, Abby, to also paint a picture, this is the last budget for Jubilee in this particular term. Maybe what is it that we should expect for them to put on the table? What is it that they can do? Is there much that they can do? Is it too late in the day for them to do anything?
I think, Mike, it's going to be an interesting budget because, as you rightly say, this is the last budget being presented by the Jubilee administration, and they'll be very particular in terms of allocating money to projects that can be completed before the August elections, and it is predicted that we are going to see a lot of election spending. What do I mean by election spending? This simply means the president and his cabinet will sit down and say, hey, we have these items that we promised Kenyans before we finish our term? Is it a question of money? Yes, we want to allocate money, let's say, to Outer Ring Road project, which is supposed to be completed by July. We're looking at the standard gauge railway. It's supposed to do the maiden trip come the 1st of June. So all these are quite critical because the government wants to project an image that as much as we are going into an election, we have delivered on our promises. So expect more financing for even road projects that had stalled. All of a sudden, you'll see some money being allocated towards that. That's one of the things they will be doing, not just to save their name, but also to show Kenyans we have lived up to our promises. Of course, a number of promises might not also be achieved, bearing in mind the turnaround time for some projects like the Kalana-Kulalu irrigation project. It might not be executed within this time frame. There was the issue of the 5 stadiums that were to be built in different places, counties in the country. So this is an issue that we're also going to see the government trying to avoid introducing new taxes because currently, as you've rightly said, Kenyans are overburdened by the tax issue because if you look at the amount of tax people are paying vis-a-vis the services they are getting, I mean, it's just another world. I mean, look at how much people are paying for parking in Nairobi, 300 bob. Look at how much people are paying for fare to come to town. How much does a meal cost in the CBD? Just a decent meal. You wouldn't pay anything less than 250 shillings.
Abby,
And
if I could just add on to this,
Yes,
even as you speculate on this budget, the government has promised that it will not burden Kenyans with any more additional taxes as it reads the 2.6 trillion shilling budget. But from this budget, it also expects Kenyans to raise in taxes 1.7 trillion shillings. So if it is not going to impose additional taxes, how then is the government planning to recover this money? Because this is the highest amount of taxes Kenyans have been required to raise for the budget.
I think that's a very good point, Michelle. And looking at the tax collection from the Kenya Revenue Authority, over the years, there has been significant improvement. And right now, you're seeing KRA collecting just about 1 trillion shillings. That is taxes from Kenyans. So your question was really on how will they plug the deficit. This will involve them considering other areas they can tax, be it taxing the landlords, be it taxing the betting fraternity, which has been showing some interesting trends where a lot of money being put into gambling, sports gambling to be precise. So these are some of the areas the government might target because these are the low-hanging fruit. On the other side of things, they might also consider overseas borrowing. This involves floating another Eurobond, perhaps floating a Sukuk bond, or alternatively just getting external loans at exorbitant rates, which might not be a good way to handle the deficit. So ideally, if you look back in time, Kenya's budget was mainly donor funded, and we were able to break away from that, and at least more than half of our budget is currently being financed through the tax collection from the domestic economy. So that's a critical area, Michelle. And I know, Mike, you also want to chip in on this.
No, I actually wanted to find out, this being an election year, I mean, this is going to be a unique budget in the fact that, first of all, it's going to be read earlier. Normally it's read in June, but because of the elections, of course, it's going to be read earlier. What impact should we expect by virtue of the fact that during this time, between now and August, there's a lot of money going round? Does that help us as an economy? Does that help us as individuals because there's a lot of money going around and this is campaign money as expected?
So really, Mike, and also I know Michelle's question was somewhat geared towards what you've asked. Looking at the budget, ideally it's supposed to be in June, but we've broken away from the tradition, and right now the budget is being tabled in March. This simply means we'll have a predictable environment where investors know the government is planning to spend this much on this and this. So it will sort of instill some consumer confidence that before elections, this is the plan we have as a country to raise taxes, and to how do we plan to raise our revenue and how do we plan to spend it. because those are the two basic elements of a budget: your spending plan and your revenue raising plan. So ideally, the impact this will have is we are likely to see investors not taking on a wait and see approach. On the flip side, they'll be able to know what we want to spend on, how much we want to spend on, and this will perhaps inform their decisions moving forward on our engagements. And it could be some good news, because in an environment where this is the country's budget plan, it actually eases the speculation, because we would have had to wait till June, and I mean it's a good practice we are seeing, and it's supposed to perhaps give people that relief that we know where we are going, we have our plans in place. But the other big question, Mike, is looking at our budget. It has been growing. Right now it's at 2.3 trillion shillings, and it's at 2.3. This year's budget it's 2.6. So another 300 billion in terms of our spending plan. And looking at some of the key conversations you have with different players in the industry, be it on the person of interest, I don't know, what has been the general feeling among people on how much more we want to spend? What is the sentiment?
Well, what has come forth very clearly is the fact that Kenya has become a very, very expensive place to live in. And that is, if you look at the fuel prices, I think we are among the highest priced fuel in terms of fuel price in Africa. And even when you compare with places like the US, for example, we're still quite high. When you look at cost of living, just your basic commodities, which is one of the aspects and one of the things that came out clearly when we were talking to people on the streets, it's basic commodities. I mean, if you look at the price of, I'll give an example that Eric gave us, and he was saying maybe 3 years ago, if you walked into a supermarket and bought things worth 1,000 shillings, you certainly would come out feeling like, you've been to the gym because of the mere weight of the things. But if you walk into a supermarket today and buy things worth 1,000 shillings, you probably would be lucky to come out with 2 paper bags, depending on what you buy. So generally speaking, cost of living has become expensive. When you look at the business area, there's also been a lot of complaints from people who are trying to do business, because it's very difficult to expand your business. It's very difficult to expand in an environment where people cannot spend. For you to expand your business, you need people to spend and buy the products or the commodities or the services that you have. Evelyn gave us an example of a mere, if you walk into a restaurant and you look at the amount of money that you spend, if you look at the levy, the amount that is going towards taxes, it's huge. So that needs to come down somehow. However, how practical is it? And that's where maybe you come in from the business angle. How practical is it for prices to actually come down? This could be the cheapest that they are, and the cheapest that they will remain for a long time.
All right. And Mike, as we wrap up for now, I know Michelle, looking at one of the aspects that will critically inform this year's budget is devolution. And we were together at the devolution conference that happened a few weeks ago. And of course, Michelle, you did interact with a number of the governors, and we are seeing the amount allocated to counties has grown. Right now, it used to be at 290 billion shillings. They're looking to allocate 304 billion to go towards counties. Michelle, what were some of the engagements you had with the governors you spoke to during the devolution conference, and what were their expectations really in terms of allocation?
Well, really, the biggest thing, speaking to governors at the devolution conference, Abby, what came out most is the issue of funding towards the counties. Every governor, they are saying it is the counties are underfunded. They need more money to be able to implement the projects as well as the transfer of functions to their counties. But this is set to be another headache for the government as well as for Treasury, ensuring that money that has been disbursed to the counties as well as to other sectors of the public service is actually used in service delivery for the Kenyans. As it is, we've already had the Treasury just about a month or two ago come out and hit at the public service as well as county governments, saying that they have in excess of 1 billion shillings lying in their accounts that they have not used for service delivery, but they're still going to the Treasury to ask for more money. So meaning that along the way, some of this money is misappropriated. There aren't enough measures in place and structures in place to really account for how this money is used. So this is another headache that the budget is set to address later this morning. Many thanks, Abi Agina and Michael Gitonga, who are coming to us live from right outside Parliament, where Treasury CS Henry Rotich will be giving the budget statement later today. And in our interaction on our question of the day, we were asking you whether you expect anything new from the budget statement later this afternoon. And the responses have come in so far. 20% of you say yes, they do expect something new. 70% say no, while 10%, a worrying 10%, say they do not care. And we have another, one of our opinions there, one saying, the question was whether they expect anything new. Pretold Boge says, I don't expect anything. Since I started hearing budget commodity prices, prices have always been increasing and governments don't care. All right, and those are some of your comments. And then we have Malonze here saying, we also do not expect anything new from the budget. We, in fact, expect some prices of commodities to go higher. Do continue interacting with us. KTN News, of course, is bringing you comprehensive coverage of this budget reading. Our countdown there on the bottom left of your screen. Just about 6 hours and 1 minute to that budget reading. So that conversation continues. But that brings us to a close here on Morning Express. We thank you very much for watching. My name is Michelle Ngele. On behalf of everybody who's made this successful, our producer, Diana Tariq, director Jared, and of course, Michael Gitonga and Abi Agina out on the streets. We thank you for watching. Do have a good day. Up next is Sophia Wanuna with Worldview.
KTN News. Get the